The life you're creating is a direct reflection of the energy that you're embodying. What if your environment, your style, your space actually shape that energy more than you realize? If you have ever felt like you outgrow your current environment or knew that you were evolving, but your space, your style, your surroundings didn't quite reflect what was going on internally, or if you sensed that something needed to shift, but you couldn't quite put your finger on what needed to change, this conversation may just support that click. In this podcast episode, we are answering the question, how do you intentionally style your energy by aligning your mind, your body, and your space so that life begins to reflect the level that you're stepping into? Because your environment is not neutral. It's either reinforcing who you have been or it's supporting who you're becoming. And when you begin to make intentional shifts in your space, your style, and your mindset, you don't just change your surroundings, you actually change your entire state. And sometimes that means the actual state that you're living in. Today's guest is someone who is redefining what style actually means. Colleen McCann is the founder of Style Rituals, where she teaches leaders how to style their energy by fully aligning their mind, their body, and their space. Her work is rooted in a powerful truth. Creating intentional changes in your environment can profoundly transform your life on an energetic, mental, physical, and emotional level. Because when you shift your surroundings in a meaningful way, you actually begin to reshape the way that you live, the experiences that you have, and even the people that you attract into your life. Colleen expands this work through her book, Crystal RX, where she explores how crystals can support you in tapping into your intuition and deepening your connection to your inner guidance. Together, her work bridges environment, energy, intuition, and embodiment, helping you not just look aligned, but to actually be aligned. Colleen brings a perspective that is both practical and deeply intuitive, where style gets to become a ritual, your space becomes a mirror, and energy becomes something that you intentionally shape. You stop chasing alignment and you just start living it. I'm Kimberly Spencer, founder of Crown Yourself, TEDx speaker, and mentor to sovereign leaders here to embody their power in every aspect of their business and life. This is the Crown Yourself podcast that supports you in leading from alignment in your mindset, your environment, your expression, your business, and your energy. So if you're ready to take your environment to the next level, to align your energy, and to step into a life that reflects who you truly are becoming, stick around, hit subscribe so you never miss a conversation like the one that we're about to have with Colleen McCann. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kimberly. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I know that we have some woo-woo crew in our audience. I know we have some like woo-woo maybe interested. And I know we have some on the fence. Is this actually work? What is a crystal crew? So we've got a range here in the Crown Yourself audience. And I'd love to dive in onto the prescriptive benefits of crystals in your space and why you wrote the book on crystals and what inspired that.
Well, what inspired that was a very long journey of coming from a place of, let's say, skepticism, becoming crystal curious, and then becoming a believer, which took a while. And I ended up being asked by HarperCollins to write a book on crystals. Some people seem to think I'm an expert on the subject. And it's really interesting because through the journey of all these modalities I studied, I always found crystals present. It didn't matter what it was. It was Feng Shui or shamanism or Reiki or whatever mystical rabbit hole I was jumping in and learning. Crystals were always present. And I learned that there is a crystal for everything, and they all have their own lesson, message, meaning, something they're trying to do, something they're trying to help us with, either in our body or in our space. So that's something I talk about a lot in my book, and that I help my clients with, is finding the right crystal RX for them to work with, depending on what's happening for them at the time in their lives.
When you walk into a home and into a space, what are the typical, and is there like a typical energy that you experience, especially for those that are like in transition and moving into a new space?
Yeah.
What sort of clearing is necessary?
Sure. Well, I would first say, as a highly intuitive person, I'm clairsentient, clairaudient, clairvoyant, and claircognizant. What that means is I hear, see, know, feel things that most people can't see with their eyes or ears all the time. And when I walk into space, it is definitely like a tidal wave of information hits me. And people don't call me unless they are in a space of transition ever, right? And that can be things that are really joyous. We're moving house, we're getting married, we're having a baby, or that can also be things like death or losing a job or being forced to move, right? So it's definitely the transformational spaces where I play and work and help my clients get to where they're going next.
It's interesting because I grew up in LA and my aunt bought a house and she got it really cheap because there was a murder that happened in it.
Yep.
And there was one room and it was always my cousin's bedroom. I couldn't go in there. Like I would pop in and then I would be like, nope, can't be in this space. And energy is felt. How did you discover your spiritual gifts?
Well, that's a very traumatic story. um, so just to give everybody a reference point, I'm 46 now and in my late 20s, so about 20 years ago, I was working in fashion in New York City. And over the course of a few weeks, my intuition volume turned up really high. And what I mean by that is I walked into my local bodega to get a sandwich in the middle of the night. I was working on a trend presentation. I was hungry. And I hear a man's voice say, there's going to be a fight about bananas and the man will be 32 cents short. And I spun around and nobody's in the bodega. I walk up to the counter with my sandwich and, typical New York style, someone comes in from the front, from the fruit stand and shoves me out of the way and throws the bananas down on the counter. And I watch this guy get into an argument with the clerk and he was 32 cents short to pay for the bananas. And I just was watching this unfold and thought, you are really tired. So I went home and went to bed. And a few days later, I woke up in the middle of the night and watched a ghost walk through my wall into my neighbor's apartment. And also, I had several people on the subway come up to me and tell me they had a message for me and that I was a healer and my whole life was about to change. And of course, I did what any good New Yorker would do. I said, fuck you, get away from me.
Wow.
Okay, so I'm having premonition dreams. Obviously, the streets are speaking to me. This was awful. I was crying in the corner and I'm like, okay, cool. I was also in transition. I wasn't happy in my relationship. I was questioning, should I keep taking my career in this direction, even though I was successful and good at it, happy. And I got a very strong message from the universe that things were about to change. But I was also, in this place that I was wondering, and I'm like, great, now I get to add crazy to my list. Like, I don't need this right now. And I ended up, so I had one of my clients, a girl in PR that worked there. She came up to me one day when I was in the office for a meeting and said, do you believe in psychics? And I said, I don't know. I don't really have an opinion on the subject. She asked me 3 or 4 times in a course of a month and says, you should go see my friend Asa. And I said, well, who is that? She said, he's a psychic. And I thought, oh my God, this girl can tell something's wrong with me. What was the first thought? And you have to remember, this is 20 years ago. Internet is not what it is. There's no social paper trail, like Instagram, TikTok doesn't exist, right? I called this guy on the phone. I wouldn't give him my last name. I wouldn't give him my email, right? I'm skeptic. And I didn't tell him why I wanted to see him, which I wasn't really sure why. I'm like, hi, I'm crazy. Can you help me? I don't know. So he opens the door and looks at me and says, you're not crazy. You're psychic. And pulls me into his office and tells me I need to read some books and asks me if these things are happening, which was what I just told you was happening. And he also told me, and by the way, you're going to leave fashion, leave New York, and move to California. And again, like a typical New Yorker, I was like, over my dead body, am I leaving this island? Well, I did leave fashion. I did leave New York, and I do live in Los Angeles. So he might be psychic. So that is how I initially got into this. And he told me I needed a mentor. And as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will show. I had many mentors, like the floodgates opened, and I had a crystals mentor and someone that was helping me just kind of understand what it means to walk around in the world as a sensitive person mentor. And like all these people started showing up. And I was really doing this to like make it stop. I wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm going to go and do this now. This is a great idea. I was like, I don't want to see dead people anymore. And I want to go back to fashion and be left alone was really the purpose of all this. But the more I engaged with this, the louder it got. And I studied in secret for 7 years and told nobody. And I studied many, many, many things and ended up becoming a Reiki master. I studied Feng Shui, crystals, of course, tarot, astrology, shamanism, all kinds of things. So I realized I did need to switch careers, and that was how Style Rituals was born. The weird thing was, after I started my brand, after I moved to Los Angeles, people in fashion, beauty, and entertainment were really who was coming to me, because that's been my tribe for my entire adult career. And they would always tell me, well, you get it, right? Like, I want to bring my problems to you because you get it. You get what it's like to work with the fussy photographer, this creative director working on a movie set, or all these different things. So I do work with other people now. I work a lot since I do space work now. I work a lot with real estate agents, architects, builders. That I've added that crew to my list. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think so many, when they're unlocking their spiritual gifts, I think that we all have the gift of intuition. It just takes space to unlock it. And I have so many of my clients who they'll come to me for business growth, and then they'll be like, and I kind of had a dream about someone. And I'm like, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But in the space of understanding your spiritual gifts, what practices have helped ground you in our 3D world that has a lot of noise, that has a lot of shadow?
I think what's helped ground me in our 3D earth plane is having really strong boundaries. And that's had to become a practice, and it's still a practice every day. And that is, if I'm too overwhelmed, I can't do too many things in 1 week. Like if I got invited to a party on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because I'm a sensitive empath and I go into everybody's space like a lint roller and pick up their fuzz, I can do one social engagement over the weekend, not 3, or I'm completely burnt, and then I can't see clients during the week, right? So I have to be very careful about that. I have to watch who I hang out with. I have to have a boundary around who I spend my time with. I've definitely fired clients, so I have to have boundaries around who I see and why. And I would also say something else that's helped me a lot is I call it energy dumping at night. I release everybody that I've talked to, seen, hugged, ran into during the day. And literally, whether that's clients, like I'll release you later tonight because we spoke. Somebody bumps into me on the street, I'll just be like, guy who like cross-checked me on Fifth Avenue, right? Like that guy. And I let it go, because you should never hold anybody else's energy except your own. And that includes like your spouse, your children, your parents, your best friend. Like you don't hold anybody else's energy, because it will affect you. You won't sleep. You're thinking about things. You're having dreams about people, right? So to kind of do my best to silence the noise, that's a boundary I put around myself at night before I go to bed, and dump everybody's energy away from me.
What is the practice that you do? Like you say release, but is it physical? Is it somatic? Is it a shower? Is it a salt bath?
Well, I'm definitely using herbs all day long between clients. I'll even, because we're having this conversation, like I'm going to use sage or whatever herb I pick afterwards to just neutralize and like reset the stage for the client I'm going to see next. And then I see that client, and then I do the same thing after that client. So it's about just bringing everything back to neutrality. So I definitely do that. I'll use some kind of herb before bedtime. I clear out my room, I clear out my office. And then as far as this like energy dumping technique, I do it with my eyes closed and I'm laying in bed. I bring that person like up in front of my face. Like, so I'll bring your beautiful face in front of me and say, Kimberly, we had such an amazing talk today, and I hand you back all your energy. And stranger who stepped on my toe in the coffee line, right? I give you back anybody that kind of like just comes up in the day. It's not about being bad. And that's the thing. It's just not mine to hold. So I do that. I go through the list, and then I just tell the universe, I let all those people go. I send their energy back to them. And the only person's energy I hold is mine. And I say, I call all my energy back to me from wherever in the multiverse it might be.
Yeah, and the scatteredness of energy, because I know from having worked with a lot of empathic beings and a lot of intuitive clients that may not even know how intuitive they are, that those energetic boundaries are so essential, and reset practices like what you just described are, I think it's great to have a collection of practices and you see what fits and what works best for you.
Absolutely.
When you are guiding a client through a style ritual to clear their space, do you start with the person first before you go into their environment?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. And it is a case by case basis. Someone books a session with me and I start to intuit because now I've connected with them. I get messages in the shower a lot when I wake up for whoever's coming in that day. Sometimes it's about them. It could be about the building. It could be about who used to live inside the building, or it could be about the land. There are many, many facets to look at. Sometimes it's all of them. Sometimes it's one.
One of my very good friends was a psychic in LA, and she since moved to North Carolina. And she used to do real estate psychic,
Yeah.
and just kind of like, don't buy this property. And she told my husband and I before we bought an investment property years ago, she was like, Albuquerque, not so much. And that property was such a pain in the butt. And I think you can't miss what's for you, but you can certainly apparently we really needed to learn a hard lesson there.
Yeah, I get that. I sometimes I'm stuck in traffic in LA and I'm staring out the window and I'm like, nope, not that house. Or that one feels
Mhm.
weird. Or the vibes are just like coming out of the house.
I had that in Fredericksburg. I was walking past what used to be the hospital building. I was like, I can't go in there. My husband was like, oh, okay. By now he's knows, and I have not trained nearly like you have, but I've just started to notice these things awakening in myself for the past few years, especially since after my dad passed, which definitely was a soul contract. But in your process of awakening and exploring these gifts, it sounds like they hit you like a bit of a Mack truck. I mean,
Completely.
like, and when did you have the shift into embracing them? And how have you been able to navigate the difference between intuition and impulsivity and emotion?
When did I accept this? Honestly, when I moved to California, I was still like, what the fuck am I doing? I can't believe this what happened in my life. I expected to be like an executive for a huge fashion company, and I'm moving to Venice, California in my yoga pants, and I'm going to do psychic readings. Like, how the fuck did I get here? Truly. And I got there. I think it was starting to realize how I was helping people and watching their lives shift, which was so gratifying. That was helping me to have a different outlook on what the universe had in mind for me for my career. That's the honest truth. Like I meet people, I hear people on podcasts saying how they're like, I always knew I wanted to do this. I had this calling. And I was like, God, I didn't. I this is not what I expected. It's truth.
I love your story because you're like the reluctant hero, where it's like it's kind of like with politicians in a way. Like, I want the one who doesn't want to lead. Like, I want the one who doesn't want the spotlight. And it's being able to have that. There's a level that you just bring that's so beautifully humble, but also honoring the calling and the gifts that you were given in the practice of awakening to our intuition and awakening to these gifts that we have. And I do think more and more people around the world, as I've talked to a lot of people, are awakening to gifts that they're like, don't need to see a ghost. I don't need, like, I feel this energy. I don't know why I feel it in this space. And there's these things that science can't quite quantify. But there's also, I think, the awareness of as you're navigating what is intuition and what is impulsivity, what is emotion driven that's like maybe unhealed in the shadow side. How did you do that dance between discerning what is from higher self, as source, God, creator, however you language it?
I think what helped me figure out what was intuition, what was impulsivity was practice every day with clients. I mean, thousands of intuitive readings before I ever did this professionally. And, I had stage fright. So of course I didn't feel I was ready. I was ready, but I practiced for a really long time in environments where it was a safe space for me to have the experience. And it was really interesting because I get a lot of body feels with my intuition. So like if I know there's a dead person in the room, I always get a low ear or low ringing in my left ear. Or I know if I need to tell somebody they have to get Reiki or learn Reiki, like I'll get like what feels like a hot flash and it will persist. And as soon as I tell them, it goes away. That's another thing. Like, or if I have in a reading, all of a sudden I'll get like this like horrid headache out of nowhere. And I have to look at my client and be like, hey, have you been getting really bad headaches? And they're like, how did you know? I was like, because I can feel it.
Mm.
So I think that the body senses have been really helpful. And then also just having the skills as far as shadow work, which, oh gosh, I find this interesting. And I'm sure any healer that sees people one-on-one can speak to this, that your shadow loves to walk through the door as your client. And
Never heard it put that way, but that's so interesting.
lucky I've got a good poker face. And and hear me out. We're saying shadow and people can feel that sounds scary. That can also just be your past experiences, if we call it that, whether it's in this life or another. And I'm the oldest of 3 girls, right? And I really had to step up in my family. So I get a lot of oldest daughters to me, or I get people that are in the fashion industry and are drowning and want to leave, or I get people that left and started a business. Like, so I will see things that could have shadow aspects that I've experienced in my life, and they walk through the door. The biggest one I get, which I was never ready for this, is like, I feel like I'm the Pied Piper to other healers who have had really difficult awakenings because of I mean, I've talked to a lot of healers in the last 20, professionally and socially. Anyone who asks my story, they're like, damn, that's like the meanest opening I've ever heard in my life. And I said, yeah, I mean, it was pretty traumatic. I was crying in the corner a lot. So I think it's really interesting to, something that did for me look like my greatest shadow, like my reality shattering. And I get people walking through the door that carry that same shadow, if we're going to call it that. And my greatest darkness became my greatest light.
Yeah, I've seen that too in my coaching practice, as business owners who have multiple businesses, or business owners that have started out in a space of high achieving for the sake of proving themselves, and those shadows and facing them. And I think that that's why it's so integral. Like I don't necessarily believe the statement that like a coach always has to have a coach. I think you can always be, but as long as a coach is always learning, healing, and doing their own work, I think that's the deepest part. You don't necessarily need a coach to be doing that, but to be looking at your shadow, staring at boldly and courageously in the face of harsh self-awareness and examining yourself. When you see your shadow now, how does it land for you when you see your shadow walk through the door as a client?
I'm sure this will be the quote for the podcast. My shadow is my best friend.
So
It, it has to be. I mean, when you look at your shadow, you get to heal and you get to empower yourself and grow and move forward and not make the same stupid mistakes, hopefully. So I love doing shadow work. Look, I have a Scorpio moon. Like I am in that shadow dumpster hard, like all the time. I can't escape it. So can't say I like it, but like I don't have a problem going, should we say, shadow diving instead of dumpster diving, because it's just a part of life. And I think that when people run away from their shadow, they're not healing, they're not growing, they're not handling ancestral wounds. There's so many things they're not doing by looking at the pieces of their life that are affecting them and holding them back, really, if that's what we want to call shadow.
How do you see that showing up in someone's environment?
I see shadow showing up in people's environment in a lot of ways, but when I feel called to, let's talk about like possessions, really. Here's my greatest example. And of course, ex-fashion stylist, like, let's go to the closet. And I go into people's closets and will take my hand, like a metal detector, and run it over clothes. And I pull things out that like feel energetically charged for some reason. And sometimes I know what it is and sometimes I don't. Inevitably, I pick out the ratty gym t-shirt and I'm looking at a girl and I'm like, what's this? Here come the tears. She's like, that's my ex-boyfriend's t-shirt and I sleep in it and I go to the gym in it. And I'm like, girl, how are you going to get over him if you're wrapping yourself in this toxic man that you need to dump? So what I find most gratifying in a situation like this is to take it outside and light it on fire. Fire is the greatest purifier.
And that's my family crest is my maiden name is Mackenzie, and our crest in Scottish is Lucero non oro, which means shine, don't burn. So,
Yes.
and I'm a fire bunny. I love me some fire. Too much fire, though, I do get burned, burn out. But I think I love the fact of setting things that, this is going to make me sound like a pyro, but like, I love the idea of setting things on fire, especially that no longer serve you. After my dad passed, we moved into our house and I had a whole thing. And there was like, it just intuitively came to me, and it was around a new moon. And I was like, there's a journal that I have to find that I have to burn. And it was a journal of my dad from when he was in rehab. And I was like, I set it on fire and I let it go. And it was like, those projections, they are not mine to hold. And it was so liberating. Literally the next day I woke up and things in my business started to shift that had been holding me back for a year.
I couldn't agree more. People can't believe how many stories objects hold that are affecting your energy. And look, that's good or bad, but keep the good ones and get the ones that aren't aligned with the cycle you're in or where you're trying to go. Like, get it out.
When you're thinking of location, do you examine any things like astrocartography as you're examining someone's physical location as far as where they're living and how their energy is interplaying with the energy of the space that they inhabit?
Absolutely. I am looking at I'm looking at their astrology. I'm also looking at their astrocartography, and let's lean into Feng Shui a little bit, looking at the number of the house, the color of the door, which way
the
is
number
the door
of the
facing. Yeah, which again, that can also even lead into numerology, right? So there's so many things to look at, right? Like somebody's in a house with a number that doesn't align with, like, let's just say partnerships, and they can't figure out why they're getting in fights, or a partner won't walk through the door with someone that's single. It's really interesting.
Fascinating. What is the number that wouldn't align with partnerships?
I mean, think about maybe like 9 is endings. Like you want to be in a 2 house, right? That's partnerships, or a 3 also. Those have 4 as stability, 5 as great change, right? Which again, you might want that, you might not. Why does everything keep shifting in my environment? I'm like, well, you live in a 5 house, like that's why.
Is that by adding like the number of that you live in?
Right. So imagine your
address.
Like imagine you live on 13 State Street. You want to pull the 13 apart. 1 plus 3 is 4, and you live in a 4 house.
So I'm not going to say what my present address is, but my childhood address. So 644.
Yep.
That would be
so that's 14
or 1 5. Would that be 5? Pull the 1 and 4 apart? Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to pull that apart. 6 plus 4 plus 4 is 14. 1 plus 4 is 5. So you lived in a 5 house, so a change house.
Blowing my mind, Colleen. Yes. For those of you who know my story, like there was a lot of change. There was a lot of chaos, even though I never moved as a child. Like there was a ton of change with the shifts in my dad's personality. he was an addict. And so there was a lot of change. That's so fascinating.
Yes.
My goodness. I'm adding up my current address. I'm like, so looking at that numerology, that's a wonderful tool.
It is. And even not even just the astrocartography, but the actual landscape. I'm thinking about neighborhoods in Los Angeles of like you see over on like the Silver Lake area where there's all these houses kind of stacked on top of each other. Like there's a whole energy with like think about having a house like looming behind you. Do you live at the end of a cul-de-sac? That's a different thing. Do you live on a curve of the road, and whether it's on the like the outside or the inside of the curve? Like there's so many things that you can divinate around the house space that somebody's in that's affecting them both good and bad.
Mm-hmm. What positive effects have you seen? And is it more personalized depending upon the person and their own astrology, their own human design, like their own energetic makeup? Or is it like, here's some frameworks like living at the end of a cul-de-sac or living on a private road or living, on a busy street?
Yeah, I mean there's definitely it's yes and
Yeah.
both, right? There's frameworks that you can learn in different modalities. Vastu is like the Indian feng shui. Then you also have feng shui, which everyone's familiar with that one. Shamanism can kind of come in with some of this spatial awareness too. There's so much to look at. And again, I've been studying all of this for 20 years and I still find something else. And I'm like, oh, this is new. And astrology, obviously, because astrocartography falls into there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if for those that are new to the world of astrology and all of this, just start studying and start exploring and allow yourself to be curious. When you enter a home, is it a sense that you feel? How do you open yourself up to experience the energy of the room, or are you already an open channel?
When I enter a space, it hits me like a tidal wave. I more have to like work on not being open all the time. Like that's a boundary for me. When I go over to a friend's house, I have to more, keep it to myself, really. Like I'm there to have a drink. I'm there to have fun. I don't, I hear people a lot say, oh, I wish I could do what you do. And I'm like, don't say that. No, you don't. Like it's walking around all the time and sensing strangers' energy when you're walking down the street isn't fun for me. Like it's work. When I have to do this with someone, it's work. And I like to keep it as best I can in that space. And I'd say that there's also a boundary around that. I get asked this question a lot. They're like, oh, if you were like in the grocery store and heard this information about somebody in the bread aisle, would you go up and tell them? Absolutely not. They did not ask me. I do not know that person. It's an energetic boundary that I'm not going to cross for 1,000 reasons.
I think that's a wonderful pivot into the question of permission. Because if you are woo curious and exploring, you're going to see a lot of people online sharing what you should do. And I think that in some ways, a lot of astrology has become like fear marketing of like, if you don't do this ritual on this new moon, then like the rest of your life is done. And I no, and I'm like, if it's meant for you, it's meant for you. Like there's nothing stopping it if it's meant for you. However, there is the space of permission. And how do you do that dance, especially if something is deeply leaning on your heart to share or to say, or knowledge that you want to impart to the world, whether on a podcast or in social media or in your marketing? How do you do that dance so that you don't clutter up your own karma?
I mean, one way is I try and keep it to myself unless I am in session with someone or someone has asked me directly, Colleen, what do you think about this? Otherwise, if, like one of my girlfriends, if they just need an ear, I hear them. That's it, right? They just need to vent to somebody. And I don't say, well, I'm sensing that da 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 da, unless they directly ask me for my opinion or my intuitive sense about something. I don't really share that. And again, it's also work for me. Like I want someone to think about this. This is what happens. You are a dermatologist and you go to a cocktail party and you tell someone you're a dermatologist, what's the first thing they do? They pull up their
Well, how's
shirt
my
and they're like,
skin?
can you look at this? Do I need to do anything? Right. And that dermatologist is like, yo, I'm off duty right now. And that person is actually breaking a lot of boundaries. So so again, it's work for me. Like, it's not fun for me to just walk around and tell strangers about their future or something I'm sensing that they need to work on. Like, I absolutely don't do that, and I don't want to do that. So if it's in a space of agreement where someone has come to Style Rituals and booked a session for me, then we'll talk about it. There have been times that like I keep getting pushed to tell somebody that I know something. And again, I'm like, do you want me to share something with you? And I'm gentle about it too.
I think that's such a important thing also for business in general, because so many people push their strategy, their external thing onto you of like, oh, this is what you should do in order to achieve X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yeah, that success strategy may have worked for that person at that scale with their audience, but it may not actually be how you do you. I'd love to pivot though in exploring, because so many healers, so many spiritual business owners deeply struggle with being able to charge for these gifts. How did you navigate that dance, and is there still space where you're still struggling in that area?
I'm not struggling with that. Did I? Absolutely. And I think this is like the age old like vision of these nomadic healers from 500 years ago and wearing capes and carrying a staff and like going from village to village in the rain, right? And like helping someone or helping the community. And yeah, of course that happened. And that's not where we are anymore. Is a skill that I've done a lot of training in. And it's important that we hold an energetic exchange, that I give you my services for what we honor on the earth plane, which is money. I mean, think about it this way. If we're going to look at karma and somebody keeps pushing on me for information and they're not willing to have an exchange with me, there's something there that brings the karma out of alignment instead of keeping it in a like neutral place. So it's incredibly important for healers in any modality, and there's a lot of them, that you are charging, and you are charging for your worth. And I always say, like, I watch a lot of the giant brands never put things on sale.
Hmm.
And I've learned, again, so many spiritual people cringe when I say this, but so much of what I've learned running my wellness business, I've learned from fashion, is your worth is not for sale.
Percent. When you are going on podcasts, I'm very curious, do you have a lot of podcasters who are like, okay, well, like now let's turn this into a session for me?
I do. And I quickly let them know we're not going to do that.
I think that that's so valuable, because I think that there is a dance between showing versus telling, but I also think in looking at what the medium is and how you get to honor and protect your energy in the exchange of value. Because I think a lot of times podcasts can be turned into a pick your brain session sometimes, or an experience or gift sessions without actually the full exchange of what's possible.
Again, this is one of those things like you learn through experience, right? And
Hmm.
very early. So I've been running Style Rituals for 11 years now. And at the beginning, sometimes people would like, DM me or email and be like, oh my God, I live in Venice too. Can we go out for tea? Like, and I get there and, I would think maybe I'm going to make a new friend. I just moved from New York, and this person was totally trying to pump me for information. So there's no like DM reach outs for tea with like, I'm not doing that. So I think I've just had to draw boundaries around that. And honestly, like, I don't get it. This is a very private exchange. And when I've had people try to do that to me on a podcast, I'm thinking, you don't know what I'm going to say. Like, do you really want me to air your dirty laundry out to your entire community right now? I mean, if you do, here we go. But um, it's not the right place. It's the same way people ask me at parties or something, somebody meets me and wants to know something, I just tell them, I'm like, hey, I'm off duty right now. If you want to book a session with me, like you can do it online. And that's that. Like, I have no problem saying no now. And that was really hard for me. Again, that was a boundary. My gosh, let me bring this home. I was talking about the nomadic healer from 500 years ago. For some reason, and I can't figure this out, that people that fall kind of under that like healer, wellness, spiritual practitioner category, I there's some stigma around that we should do this work for free or do it at a discount. And I don't know what that is, because you look at other people, let's say a Western therapist or all the other people that fall into like Western healership, people have no problem paying them for their time. So I don't understand why people that kind of fall under, let's just say like Eastern modalities, run into this a lot. And it's important for us as a collective to draw a boundary together and say, no, we're not going to do that, because what you permit, you promote, and what you promote, you permit.
Do you think that that could be because that in the past we used to live in tribal communities where, you know, the oracle, the visionary would be like protected and supported and uplifted by the community, but not necessarily like by monetary gains? It's not like the oracle was the king. It's the oracle was honored and revered and supported by the community, but it was just in a different facet other than our 3D form of transaction, which is money.
I totally get that. And I think, yes, it's like deeply ingrained ancestrally in our culture that that was the way to support somebody that did this type of work, but that's not the society we live in anymore. And I even think about like the Oracle of Delphi, for example, that they have records that when people would come to see her for information, they brought an offering. I have read it that like, coins, whatever that means, whatever their monetary exchange was, or like apples or some, they brought her food, they brought her water, they brought her something. And so if they were actually doing that, and it is historically correct, there was an energetic exchange to that. But to your point, like people taking care of whoever was like the oracle in their community, yeah, you have to take care of her then. Give her a place to live, give her food, do this, do that. This wasn't a one-way street.
How do we as a collective have also discernment against charlatans, against those that have, or also spiritual healers who have not done their shadow work and thus end up projecting a lot? Because I've seen that all over the internet. In fact, one of my mentors posted that like she went to a psychic and said like don't listen to Joe Dispenza, and because he has entities attached or something like that, and not like nothing against Joe. And she was like, she listened to that for years and then started listening to his meditation. She was like, no, I really like Joe.
Yeah.
So how do we protect against the projections or the distortions from the spiritual community, and also from the charlatans who are, because there's a lot of them that I've been seeing coming up.
Yeah. I mean, Joe Dispenza is an interesting example, and I've met him a long time ago before he like blew up.
Hmm.
I heard him speak, and I would say that man has done his shadow work, and that's not correct. Whether you like his teachings or not, that's a different conversation, but he's definitely done his work, and he's a great example. You can tell by what he talks about with his story and what he did to face his shadow. He's done the work. So I think it's important to hear somebody's story. And again, muggles love paperwork. And I think
That's the quote for the podcast.
there it is.
There it is.
I think it's important for both of us, healers and people that are on the other side of whatever that healing session is, to go to class, to study with teachers. And whether you want to get accreditations from certain schools, which there's tons of them now, to South America or China or India or Ireland, whatever lineage you are called and able to study, make sure that you talk about the people, the lineage that you've been blessed to study with. It's so there's 1,000 roads up the mountain. There's not just one healer school that all the healers go to. Like that's impossible. But I think it is important to check into what that person's history is with what they're doing. And I mean, honestly, for me, like I just get an ick. Again, and again, it's interesting. Like that could be, without looking into it energetically, I'm like, is that an ick around like that person's just not for me and that's totally cool? Or is that an ick that like that person hasn't done their work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the skill set of discernment is one that is needing to be very cultivated, especially in our age of AI. How have you sharpened and refined your own discernment, and how can we practice that?
I've sharpened my discernment by actually listening to my intuition. There have been so many times earlier on in my life, and look, I'm not perfect. It still happens, but not as much that like I'll just get a feeling about somebody or don't go out today or don't go there or don't engage in that situation. And I wouldn't listen and it would bite me in the ass. So I think literally just listening to whatever that body sense is or feeling or nudge from the universe that you're getting that something is or isn't for you, and to please listen to that. That is the number one way.
Do you see, because I know you work with a lot of people in entertainment, and Hollywood in general has a ton of shadow, as we have seen, experienced, P. Diddy and all the things. Are you seeing a correlation to more and more light coming through this darkness? I've heard it said by some people that in order to achieve a level of visibility, fame, recognition, success in this 3D world, that requires there to be like dark entities involved. Have you seen a correlation, especially being in the entertainment and fashion industry?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of shadow, and there's places with their shadow in every industry.
I think that a lot of people who blanket that as a prerequisite that, just because that person's achieving a certain level of fame or visibility, I don't think that's necessarily means they've done a deal with the devil or something like that.
Absolutely not. Look, I've met a lot of celebrities, and some have been very good-hearted, and some don't have other people's best interests in mind. And again, I think you see that in any industry.
Mm-hmm.
Any friend circle, anywhere you go, right? Like there's people that are very light and there are people that are kind of shadowy.
That need to do some shadow work. So as we're facing our own shadows, what are a few steps that we can take to clear our energy, to clean our temple, both, internally in our body and externally in our home, to create practices and rituals that support us in growing in our light and consciousness?
I think the number one thing you can do is to look at yourself in the mirror and be honest with yourself that, hey, I have some work to do around this thing. And it doesn't stop, right? So that's the other, like, that's a huge red flag for me. If you ever meet a healer that's like, I've done all my work and like I've ascended and I've done all these things, like fucking run. If you are in a meat suit right now, you are doing your work. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've achieved. So it's important to look at yourself and constantly do your work when things come up. We are onions and we peel, and something new will come to our attention that we need to pay attention to. So I would say looking at yourself is number one, and engaging with whatever's coming up in front of you, admitting to it, getting the help, talking about it, whatever you need to do. And then also within your home space, again, the objects, like it's such a big thing to have objects, I think, that feel poisonous or from your past or not for you anymore, whether that's clothing, your couch, plants, jewelry, whatever it is. Let it go. Let it go live another life somewhere else.
Amen. I think there was a piano that we brought with us, my great grandmother's piano. We brought it with us from California to Texas when we moved here. And I was pregnant with my daughter, and I'm looking at this piano. It had two little rickety legs. Like it had stood the test of time. It had moved. It was solid. It was all wood, but I was staring at it and I just had this like gut intuitive moment that I was like, we have to get rid of that. Like, that is a death trap. And I had to check in. And I was like, is this my anxiety? Is this like
Yeah.
pregnancy anxiety? And I was like, no, so I said, God, source, universe, like, give me a sign that if this is the case. The next day, my mom's shower, because she lives with us and she lives like above our living room, started leaking through right to where the piano was. And from and I was like, no,
You can't make it up.
couldn't make it up. But of course I had to double check with the universe. So we got that patched up and I was like, okay. Got it patched up, said, okay, plumber, great. A week later, I still hadn't gotten rid of the piano. And it's like, okay, I looked at it again. I had the intuitive nudge again. I was like, oh, God's first universe. Okay, if this happened a second time, like, let me know. The next day, I kid you not, like, the shower started leaking again through the air conditioning vent. And I was like, all right, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. Like, everything has energy in it. And I think that what you've done so beautifully in this podcast episode is just guide us to really assessing and becoming more in tune with the ritual of our home, the ritual of our bodies, and honoring the gifts that we have of our intuition and leaning into that. I would love to pivot into a little bit of rapid fire to wrap this up.
Sure. What you got?
Well, I was going to make a joke and be like, well, you should know what the question is. Who is your favorite female character in a book or a movie and why?
I guess my 5-year-old self is going to answer Wonder Woman.
Love
I mean,
it.
she has a great outfit and she's super powerful.
What person, alive or alive and in their time, anywhere through history, would you want to trade places with just for a day to experience the world as they did?
The Oracle of Delphi.
Yeah. What is your money routine?
My money routine, having really strong boundaries and keeping it very energetically clean.
What does that look like in practicality?
Again, charging for my worth, not putting my worth on sale, having an abundance altar, having a money tree in my home, being grateful for the money that's coming in and calling more in all the time, not maneuvering from a lack mentality. I could teach a whole class about that. Wearing money crystals.
What does it mean to crown yourself?
What it means to crown myself, I think, would be standing in my sovereignty, who I am, and embracing my lights and shadows, as we've talked about so much today.
Yeah. My goodness, Colleen, what an amazing conversation. If you love this podcast, if you are enjoying this conversation and you want to experience more of Colleen's gifts, head on over to stylerituals.com. And as always, my fellow sovereigns, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast so that you never miss a conversation like this to uplevel your consciousness as you build your empire from the inside out. Remember, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now. I'll see you next week in the next episode.